Hey everybody, it's your old pal Chuck, and I'm back with another review. And today we're taking a look at, from the Transformers Generation Selects line, this is Decepticon Exhaust. Exhaust is a repaint with a new head of the previously released Deluxe Class Wheeljack from the Transformers War for Cybertron Earthrise line. For those of you who are not familiar with the history of the character Exhaust, way back in the 1980s in the Diaclone line, we had the Lancia Stratos mold that would eventually become Wheeljack. Well, that mold was repainted and given a new head. The repainted deco looked like the Marlboro cigarette stock car. So that version of the figure was given the name Marlboro Jack or Marlboro Jack. Many years later, in the Transformers Prime line, there was a Cyberverse Legion figure done of Wheeljack that had a paint scheme similar to Exhaust. But it wasn't until the Masterpiece line where we got a repaint, retool of Wheeljack to look like Exhaust. The figure came with shoulder launchers that looked like the original toy launchers, the new head, and a new little gimmick weapon from Wheeljack. The problem there was they also copied over the Marlboro paint design. Well, much time had passed since the 1980s, and a certain law in the United States was passed that prohibited cigarette companies to advertise towards children. And because Transformers is recognized as a kids line, regardless of what the Masterpiece subline is, it was very difficult to get the figure in the United States. Some retailers were actually getting the figure and then doing very poor paint jobs themselves to fill in the space. By the way, there was also a little bit of a problem that Takara wasn't paying royalties on using the Marlboro logo. But yeah, here's Exhaust. This is actually a very different design than normal, but it is indicative of what we would recognize as Exhaust. The weapon, which is I'm storing here on top, has been painted a little bit differently than Wheeljack's. I'm just giving you a quick look before I bring Wheeljack in. You can see there on the side, I think that might be the number that Marlboro Jack had. I'm not sure. Obviously, a lot of the race licensing is no longer there because, again, copyright, sponsorships, what have you. And here on the top, even though Exhaust is recognized as a Decepticon, that's the mercenary logo. So let me bring in Wheeljack very quick, and you can see the difference between these two. Now, as I'm sure many of you have known, I haven't had a chance to review Wheeljack yet, so this will probably count as my review of Wheeljack since it's basically the same mold. Obviously, different paint schemes, different numbers on the side. Wheeljack has a lot more of that rally racing sponsorship designs on both sides. The paint scheme on the back is different. The paint on the tail fins are different. Just a little note that this one tends to not want to line up as well as this one, but other than that, the molds are basically the same. So what I'll do is, since this is my first look at the mold, we'll pause and I'll show you the transformation to robot mode with Exhaust. Okay, so I've adjusted the camera ever so slightly to give us a little working room. Although, as sure as most of you know, the mold really isn't that big. First thing you want to do when coming in is remove the weapon, just like that. It has that peg there, and then the tab to go into the shoulder, which we'll see in a minute. Next, what you want to do is make your life easy. Come underneath here, pop out what will be the arms from the side there, and then come in the back and double hinge them out and down so they're facing out to the side, and we're going to leave that there for the moment. Next, what you want to do is come underneath here and pull down on the front as you get a fingernail in underneath the windscreen, and that will separate the front of the car from the torso, and this will bring the legs down so you can then go ahead and separate. Now what you want to do is bring the feet down slightly. That'll give you enough room to unpeg and swivel out the legs, but at the same time fold down the front of the windshield and then peg it in. So we'll do that again. So when you get to this point, fold that clear piece down and it will hide in the leg. You can then bring the feet out and down so that it will sit forward like that, and then bend the legs straight back up. What you'll do next is rotate the torso around there at the waist. Nice little bit of transformation there. Flip the head up and snap it into place. Very nice. Now, this on my version of exhaust, that little the hinge piece here just frictions in, so I have it sometimes popping out, but no problem. Once you peg it into the chest there, it's nice and secure. Finally, what you want to do is rotate the arms up so the elbow joint is facing forward, and then rotate the fist down so the hole is facing towards you, and bring the arm down. Repeat again on this side, down and down. And then the final touch here will come around the back. If it hasn't already split the tail fin, there are like a natural little locking point, which I like for when it's opening and when you're closing it up like this. And there's a little bit of a friction there, but as I mentioned, this sometimes has a little hard time staying shut. I do like that little touch. As on Wheeljack, these can pop out and you'll have extra 3mm ports. And then finally, the tab hole that you use to secure the shoulders in vehicle mode can be used to secure the shoulder cannon for exhaust. And whammo, presto, changeo, you have exhaust in robot mode. And basically the colors are pretty much the same. You do have an additional amount of black coming off of the arms and legs. Those are the joints. But it's a nice look. I do appreciate the fact that they did paint the shoulder weapon. It would have been nice if they have included a second one to try and match the gimmicks and accessories from the Masterpiece figure. Here's Wheeljack coming in. So you can get a little comparison in robot mode. Let me give you a close-up look of Exhaust's head. So basically, it's, you know, Wheeljack without the faceplate. Or if they actually move the faceplate up to the eyes and bend it in half. Yeah, if you notice that, that's what it really sort of looks like. Like a little bit of a demented, mutated Wheeljack. But you can also see whereas Wheeljack is on like a very off-white, I almost want to say has a touch of green to it. This is a very crisp, almost bone white, eggshell white, if you will. And of course, the different logos, the Mercenary logo and the Autobot logo. And full disclosure, if somebody didn't point it out already, I would not have known that was the Mercenary logo. You know, I'm old, but articulation is the same. You have the universal joints there in the shoulder, a single elbow joint there. You get about 90 degrees, swivel at the bicep, swivel at the wrist, universal joints at the hips, which tend to be a little bit on the loose side, 90-degree bend at the knees, and you have the full palette of ankle articulation, including pivot. One thing I noticed that they did different is whereas on Wheeljack, they painted the underside of the fin from car mode to make for, I guess, the spoiler in car mode to make for his fins in robot mode. They did not do that here on exhaust. I actually never had the Masterpiece exhaust, so that actually might be accurate to that version of the toy. I never had the original toy either, so that might be accurate to that as well. But we'll give you like a little spin here. Yeah. I mean, it's the same mold, just a new head. So if you like the Wheeljack mold, you're going to like exhaust. If you have issues with the Wheeljack mold, the same issues are probably going to be here with exhaust. So I will pause and I'll be back with my final thoughts. Just a little silly pose there to show off some of the articulation you can get out of this mold. I did neglect to mention that, of course, since it is part of the War for Cybertron line, you do have those 5 millimeter hard points that you can peg accessories in, and the little nubbins that you can peg the blast effects in, and just have a good old time with. What you do is up to you, because ultimately these are your toys, and how you play with them is how you play with them. I actually kind of dig Exhaust. Like many people, I was very surprised when, I think on Saturday or Friday, the figure just showed up on eBay in packaging. Yes, I do want to make this clear. This is not a stolen toy. This figure came to me in the Generation Selects box, with the plastic ties secured from a reputable seller. Probably, when first we saw the shipping label that they came into the United States, that probably belonged to the person who owned that company, as this was their stock. And it did come up, and also this really did not cost as much as a stolen toy normally would. But with all that aside, I think it's a fun figure. As I said before, if you like Wheeljack, you'll like Exhaust. If you didn't like Wheeljack, you won't like Exhaust. Obviously, if if I'm going to recommend one over the other, I think I kind of have to say get Wheeljack, because as a retail figure, it will be a little bit cheaper, and Wheeljack is a core Transformer character. Exhaust really doesn't have a connection or history to G1. It's like a Neo G1 character that really has life through the Masterpiece line. But on the other hand, how many Masterpiece Decepticon cars do we have that aren't part of the Stunticons? So there's a little food for thought there. If you want to have like a little road rally Decepticon team that's not a giant part of a combiner. So ultimately, the decision to purchase is up to you. There are no flaws to the figure, at least my version that I have. So in doing this repaint with a new head, nothing drastic happened in the creation process as far as I know. Something happens, I guarantee you it'll be all over the internet, and I'll be wrong. So that's about all I can say. It's your old pal Chuck for Exhaust. We will see you next time.